So, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are an IP I have adored since childhood. The 80s cartoon, the 90s films, and I'm even a decently big fan of the 2010s duology, which I watched recently and I stand by it as a fan. So, understandably, I was really excited when Mutant Mayhem was announced, and as a huge fan of animation, I loved how this movie looked in the trailers. So I got to see it yesterday and it was pretty good, just not as good as I hoped. First of all, the obvious, the animation is absolutely gorgeous. It travels along that sort of Spider-Verse road as a few other animated films in recent years have, like The Mitchells vs. the Machines and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, but this actually takes it to another level because the drawn aspect of this animation is a lot more noticeable. Everything is less refined and polished, kind of scratchy, smudgy and messy. The circles are often massively imperfect, the expressive lines are kind of storyboard-like. It's definitely a standout in this field of animation and makes it a bit more childlike, which I think is an absolutely fair way to take it, and it looks good. In fact, all of this film is taking some kind of childlike approach, especially the humour, which is obviously fair, it's a kids movie, but there are definitely some old people writing kids dialogue happening here, and a lot of references which are gonna age like milk. I mean, for starters, they're using a lot of modern slang like Riz and sus, and with how internet culture and slang moves so fast, it's never a good idea to attempt things like this because it instantly ages your movie, even within just say a year. Also, there's multiple like Shrek jokes, which are very early 2010s kind of humor. I mean, we haven't had a Shrek film in over a decade, so think about that. Kids that are around say 13 and under have never experienced a new Shrek film. And even still, green thing looks like Shrek just isn't funny anymore. It's not a good reference. And there's tons of references to films and they kind of come off as just really forced. And I know the Turtles have grown up in the sewers and their only real connection to the real world is movies and music. It makes sense, but every joke they make, they have to shove in like multiple references, a lot of which the childlike audience aren't gonna understand, so they're trying to do kind of kid humor but with references that children won't understand. But regardless, some of the humor definitely lands well and overall the dynamics between the turtles works well. The chemistry is what you'd expect from these four brothers, and I adore that they actually are for once portrayed as actual teenagers. For as much as I love the other depictions, they're definitely not realistically teenagers. They actually switch up a lot of the depictions of classic characters here. Splinter more than anyone, who's seen as a kind of out of shape old guy, which I don't fully love. I'm glad they're doing their own thing, but I definitely love Splinter when he's depicted as this wise old master that may be a bit past his prime but is not past being a serious badass when needed. They do a bit of that here, granted, but mostly he's just a clingy father who doesn't want to let his kids leave the sewer. That aspect is handled decently well, and I love that they actually explore Splinter's role as a father in this instead of just simply their master, but I just kind of wish he wasn't as much of a loser as he is. I thought it would be a bit more controversial than what was actually controversial, which was April O'Neil, which people were angry because they changed the race of, and honestly, I could not give less of a shit. The best thing about her character is her relationship to the Turtles and how they mutually benefit from their friendship. This film puts that on full display in a way the other movies have failed at. And Ayo Edebiri does a fantastic job as the voice, as does most of the voice cast. Some of the cast is oddly placed, like Seth Rogen doing Seth Rogen but as Bebop. Ice Cube as Superfly works partially but at some points really doesn't gel. But the best performances are easily the four brothers, and honestly Giancarlo Esposito as Baxter Stockman, whose character has very little screen time but what is there leaves a very lasting impression, as does Paul Rudd as Mondo. I think honestly the biggest problem with this movie is their addiction to telling and not showing. There's a point where Splinter realizes he's kind of been acting like Superfly, the villain, and instead of allowing the audience to connect those dots, they have him literally point it out. They constantly talk about how Raphael needs therapy and that he's rage-filled, but I don't actually think we ever see that, not in the way we do in earlier adaptations. And I think the film overall struggles with showing the differences between the turtles. They're all pretty synonymous in this film where they shouldn't be. It's like Splinter says in the 2016 movie,
"You shouldn't want them all to think the same. It's their different points of view that make the team strong."
Raphael is the angry and brutish one. He struggles for power with Leonardo, but at the end of the day, he's the biceps of the team. He literally holds the weight. Michelangelo is the funny and jokey one, the younger one, the more bright one. Donatello is the intelligent one. Leonardo is the focused leader. Between these personality types and their weapon types, they're a perfect synergy. But here, every turtle could have pretty much been any single one of them and it wouldn't have made a difference. I mean, the weapons themselves don't get much of a shine when the team fight. They don't seem to use their weapons in any special kind of way, which is an issue. They should be individualistic. They shouldn't fight the same, but they do, and I think that kind of sucks. The only character traits we get from any of them is that Donatello likes anime, Leonardo likes women, and Raph is angry, which in this case I only know it because I'm literally told it. And I know I'm complaining about a kids movie, definitely aware of that, but as a fan of the source material, I think the original concepts work so well, and the reason they have lasted for the decades that they have is because these ideas just work. It's a timeless blueprint. I mean, even when Splinter fights, the fact that he's a rat is not used at all. At least in the Bay films, Splinter uses his tail as a weapon. In fact, those films expertly portray the differences between the brothers, and though the films aren't exactly the best, they definitely nail that aspect of the source material. But before this video becomes a rant, I'd like to loop back around to saying that I did in fact really enjoy this movie. I just think it could have been a bit better with some adjustments. I think it's a fantastic movie for kids, and as an animated film, it works. It just doesn't really work all too well as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. There's a lot to love, there's a lot to criticize, and I think that's why I have it pretty much in the middle of my 2023 ranking so far. But that's just me. What do you think? Have you seen Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem? If so, let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of this video. I read every single comment and reply to as many as possible, and whether it's a gorgeously animated TMNT movie or not, as always, keep watching movies.